Hello and welcome to another episode of Straight Talking Sport with me as your host, Grant Elliott. I'm here along with always Kieran Pick.
Hi.
Ryan Hodge.
Hi there.
And John Winchester.
Hi there.
And today we will be discussing the Carl Froch and George Groves match tomorrow night, along with a preview of the Barclays Premier League returns this week. We're going to go through the main fixtures. But first off, we're going to discuss the Ashes. First day we had an alright day, especially Stuart Broad, who took 5 wickets. But on the second day of play, we went out for 136. Australia now lead with 224 runs. So, guys, what happened on the second day?
We decided not to bat, did we? I was pretty optimistic after the first day. The way the experts were talking about the pitch, it did sound like it was quite flat. Not conditions suited batting, and what we got them out for less than 300. It looked like quite a modest score, but we kind of threw the match away in a day. And it's an uphill task from now to save it.
Yeah, we lost 6 wickets and we only got 9 runs in return. So obviously it's poor performance when you look at the batting. And Matt Pryor went out for a golden duck. Stuart Broad has obviously got 5 wickets on the first day of play, but in Australia they're not covering him. They're not mentioning his name because of the whole scandal that happened last year. Thoughts on that?
I think it's just a bunch of sour grapes, really. No one can deny the talent and performances that Stuart Broad brought to the opening day, taking 5 wickets. I don't know whether they're planning to continue this blocking of reporting and mentioning his name for the whole series, or whether it's just going to be for the first test.
I think it's because he had such a good performance in the first test that I think if he had a poor performance, I think they would have named him.
Well, they did say from the outset that they're going to have a broad ban. So I don't know if he was to have a poor opening day. I don't know whether or not they would have still refused to mention him due to the actions that he committed in the summer tests.
From the paper's perspective, it's brilliant though, because it's getting all this publicity that they wouldn't normally have. So I think it's really clever what they're doing, actually.
Is it not showing the newspaper maybe in a bad light? What do you reckon, John?
I think there's newspapers can report on what they want, basically, and even though he had a really good first day, if he the newspapers can decide on whether they report on everything, on just a certain aspect of the game, and the fact that they've not decided not to write about Stuart Broad is just one of their prerogatives. And the phrase "any publicity is good publicity." Well, I think they've taken it on, and they're getting a lot more interest in their publication right now. So
yeah, we went out for 136. Do you think it's too early to talk about the batting order? Do you think maybe we need to change it?
Yeah, we've still got England still have another innings in which to bat. So if they decide to cover themselves in glory in the second innings, I don't think it'd be wise to completely alter the batting lineup. Michael Carberry did well, I feel. He only got a total of 40, but for his Ashes Test debut, it's as good as what you could hope for, really. I don't think he would have expected to hit at least a half century or maybe even a century. So to top score for England, that's probably the only positive from England's first innings you could take out of it.
Well, people were saying about after the summer how they potentially could whitewash them in Australia, and after today, I think it'll be a struggle to at least win this test. I don't know about any of the other tests, but they've got a lot of thinking to do about how they play, because they've clearly been outplayed in the first test so far.
There was a common perception of a lot of people thought that England was going to win this one hands down. It was a lot of common perception, and a few newspapers put it as well in their previews. But watching what we've seen now, obviously it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, well, I feel like I should take some of the responsibility after putting a small wager on England to win this match before it started. But before the series, I wasn't that I thought we'd win, but I didn't think it would be very convincing. I think Australia will be stronger on their home turf. And their batting lineup looks more destructive than ours. I think with Warner, Bailey, Clark, Steve Smith, they've got some guys that can take the match away from England at such a fast rate, whereas England's batsmen traditionally, or in the current lineup, are a bit more patient in their run scoring, apart from maybe Peterson. And Carberry's been brought in, I think, to try and change that. But that's what England have got to be careful of. At least when Australia were losing wickets, they were scoring fairly quickly, whereas England's problem is they'll lose wickets, but they won't be scoring runs, and therefore they'll get stuck and be bowled out for a small total.
I remember tuning in to the first day when Chris Rogers had already been dismissed, and I saw David Warner. I think he was on at the time 23 runs for just 16 deliveries, which in an ODI or a one-day format, that's a pretty decent run rate. But for an Ashes first, the opening day of the Ashes, to see a run rate like that is just phenomenal. We got 4 fours in a handful of balls. So I do think that they do have a more... I agree with Kieran in the sense that England probably more methodical than Australia in terms of the batting lineup. So we'll just have to wait and see.
And obviously, Australia are in the middle of their second innings now. And at the close of play today, they're on 65 for nothing. I mean, what would be a good score for England to get them out on?
I think that I read that England haven't got more than 400 in the last 17 Test innings. So if they can get anywhere near that, it'll be a struggle for England to, especially on their performance in the first innings. I think it'll be a struggle for England to reach that target.
I mean, bear in mind they're 224 runs ahead already.
Australia can bat us out of the game really easily. Anything above 400, like John said, 400 is going to be a real struggle for England, because the pitch is actually only going to deteriorate and get more friendly for the bowlers, I think.
Okay, moving on now, we're going to preview the Carl Froch and George Groves boxing match that will happen tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Froch has had 33 professional bouts. He's only lost 2. One was against Andre Ward, the other against Mikael Kessler, who Froch beat in the rematch. George Groves is unbeaten in 19, and yesterday was the press conference. They had a few fiery words, shall we say, about each other. Froch has actually hit back and told him, "You are ridiculous, embarrassing and pathetic. I'm going to teach you to learn some respect. You're going to get annihilated." So, looking on it so far, who do you think, pre-match, who do you think is going to win?
I would probably say Froch. I think he's now quite experienced. He knows the tricks of the trade almost. And Groves is still learning that trade. I think Groves represents the new generation of boxers coming through that are a bit more trash talky, really. And Froch is a bit more old school, and I think Froch will teach him a lesson.
You say that it's people like Groves and his generation who have almost invented trash talk more, if you like.
Well, I wouldn't say invented, but exaggerated it to the point where it's now.
But that's interesting, because Froch has actually said, he's told Groves that he's got bad breath. He's trying to put him off, saying he's got bad breath. But then obviously Groves hit back and said that he's not worried about his breath. He said him saying that your breath smells is petulant and childish. So is there a case of maybe Froch coming off as though he seems the immature one out of the two?
I think I wouldn't perhaps say he's immature. I just think Froch knows how to play the press conference and play the media. I think Groves probably had to come out all guns blazing to try to intimidate Froch. Froch has got buckets more of experience than what Groves has. He's been in this world title scene for a number of years now. He's had many more world title matches. He knows how to get into the opponent's mind. I mean, Groves has had to do that with Froch as the challenger for the championships. So I don't think it's immature from Froch, but you've seen as Groves come out all guns blazing, I think he had to sort of bite back at him in some way.
I think it's commonplace in boxing now for the two fighters to have a war of words as much as a war in the ring. I think that doing it gets a psychological edge over, or tries to get a psychological edge over the opponent, and it's almost like a pre-battle if you like to think of it that way. But I think Froch will have the edge over him because he says that he's in his prime. He still feels fit. There is an 11-year age gap between the two fighters, but experience does count for a lot in boxing. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Groves is not someone that to be taken lightly. He's unbeaten in all of his professional bouts. He's 25. Could his youth and his quickness be an advantage over Froch?
I don't think youth is or an age difference is too much of a problem for boxing. If you look at George Foreman in the 90s, who was a 50-year-old world heavyweight champion, you can't really dismiss a boxer just because he may be 10 or so years older than his opponent. I believe that Froch is still in great cardiovascular condition. He's still obviously as good as his physical abilities as what he can be. So I don't think an 11-year age gap is too much of a concern.
Just to pick up on the point that John was making, I'm not sure how much of an impact the trash talking has these days in terms of getting a psychological edge. I think it's particularly since Hay and Chisora and Harrison, that kind of saga went on. I kind of think it's mainly for the media now to try and big the fight up, get the publicity. I mean, these are professional boxers. I mean, trash talking shouldn't make that much of an impact psychologically.
Psychologically, though, do you think the stare down? I mean, I know it's all for the media, the press conference, but when they have the stare down, boxers often say that they can tell if they're going to win or they can tell if his opponent's scared. Do you think that's a load of rubbish? Do you think they're just making that up, or do you think there's some aspects that are true?
Personally, I don't buy it, but it's difficult until you've been in that situation. I think it's all well and good us saying it, but I think it's a different perspective.
Again, it's just them trying to get into their opponent's heads. So.
Yeah, I think it's all for the media, really. Like the real battle's in the ring. So anything beforehand is just a bit of a show, a bit of showing that they're the alpha males as such. But no, I don't think the stare down has that much of an impact before the fight. So
okay, right. And lastly, today we are going to be discussing the Barclays Premier League fixtures, obviously after the international break. And there's some big fixtures this week with City playing Spurs. We've got the Merseyside derby. On Monday we got West Brom versus Villa, another derby. Cardiff are against Manchester United. Arsenal against Saints. And West Ham against Chelsea is another derby. Guys, looking ahead of the Merseyside derby, who do you reckon there'll be an influence there?
I think Everton are very good at home. I've been surprised how well they've done under Martinez. I was a little bit sceptical when he took charge, but he's definitely carried on Moyes' good work. It will be difficult for Liverpool to get a result there. Yeah,
it's not going to be. I mean, obviously Liverpool second in the table. Their fans will probably be expecting a win in the local derby, but it's not going to be an easy task. I mean, if you look at one of their recent away matches, they drew 2-2 in Newcastle. That was not an easy match. Newcastle were perhaps unlucky not to win that match or to drop 2 points. So it's going to be intriguing, I think. Obviously, there's a slight head-to-head, if you will, between Lukaku and Suarez from what the media has been saying. I think that if you look at the Arsenal match where Liverpool lost at the Emirates 2-0, Luis Suarez did absolutely nothing in that match. If Everton are able to contain him like the way Arsenal did, they'll have as good a chance as ever to get one over their Merseyside rivals.
You mentioned Luis Suarez there. Obviously, he's been on international duty with Uruguay, getting him qualified to the World Cup. He is travelling a lot. I mean, in the last weekend, like week of action in the Premier League, I know that Henry gave him his private jet to fly, like to make sure that he could play. Gave him his jet so he could fly after the match, and he's only just flying in today. Actually, Suarez coming back, so he's done 16 hours worth of travelling. Do you think that will play an effect on Merseyside derby? Do you think Suarez will be effective?
I think it will have an effect on his game, but Suarez and Sturridge, especially that strike partnership, is one of the most effective in the Premier League, and I think the match will be dependent on whether they show up and play on the day or not. I think that Everton, during the first half of their game so far in the Premier League, they were conceding a lot, but they've sort of got their act together coming into this fixture. So I think that that'll play a big part whether they can keep a clean sheet or not. Whether they can, I'm not so sure, because as I say, they're one of the most effective strike partnerships in the Premier League at the moment.
Liverpool, other than the away match at Sunderland, they've been scoring a lot more goals at Anfield than away from Anfield. So Everton do have a strong defence. So it's going to take a stellar performance from a Suarez or a Sturridge for them to break down Everton like they have done the weaker teams in the league this season.
I mean, Everton held Chelsea to a 0-0 draw as well at Goodison Park earlier this campaign. Predictions, guys, what do you think the result's going to be?
1-1.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it'd be a score draw.
I'd say that Liverpool will edge this one.
Score, John?
2-1, I'd say. 2-1.
And just on a quick note about the Merseyside derby, we often see someone get sent off. It's not something, obviously, we like to see. Any candidates that you think might be the one to get sent off?
I think if you, I don't know.
Suarez, maybe?
Yeah,
That'd be interesting.
Suarez.
He's the obvious choice. So.
Maybe Jordan Henderson. He's a bit fiery at times.
Okay, right, moving on now. We're going to... Arsenal are playing Southampton this weekend. No one would have thought Southampton be third in the league at this time of the season. What thoughts, guys?
Well, Saints have the opportunity to overtake Arsenal and perhaps top the Premier League if the earlier fixture goes their way. No one would have thought that at the beginning of the season. Sky Sports didn't. They didn't initially pick up that match to broadcast live on TV. Therefore, it's the 3:00 match on Saturday. I think because it's at the Emirates, Arsenal have a slight advantage. Southampton have had good away performances this season, notably the 1-0 away victory at Anfield. But I think this is the real test that Southampton need if they are to be seriously mentioned as a potential Europa League qualifying team. I think Champions League is beyond their reach. If they seriously want to, get 5th, 6th or 7th this season, these are sort of matches that they have to be performing well in and getting good results from.
I mean, do you think they can possibly continue this form and finish in the top 4? I mean, Dejan Lovren said at the beginning of the season, he said that Southampton are capable this year of getting the Champions League. Now, at first everyone laughed and thought that's a bit of a joke maybe, but, he's serious, and Southampton have been serious this year. They've performed really well.
Yeah, I think their first 11 is very, very strong, where I doubt if they've got enough quality for the Champions League is their depth in their squad. I don't think it's quite as good as the other teams in the league. But so far, they've been able to avoid any major injuries, and they've been able to be consistent with their team selection, and that's all helping. The English core that we saw a little bit at Wembley in the last 2 friendlies, I thought didn't really show what they could do. I think what will make this game so interesting is the Southampton's pressing against Arsenal's quick passing movement, how that battle will go on.
I think if they could get any result against Arsenal, it would be better for Southampton and Arsenal, because they are the informed side, Arsenal, at the moment. They're top of the league. If Southampton playing the way they are, I can see them getting a result. I know it's away, but it's not the biggest ask in the world. And if they play the way they've been playing all season, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't get a result.
I've been surprised by Southampton's defence this season. I look at their defence and immediately I don't think it's a notable stellar defence. I see it as a defence for the future, with particularly Klein and Shaw. But they've conceded the least goals in the Premier League this season. They've got one of the best defensive records in the whole of Europe in the top divisions. So the defence has pleasantly surprised me.
I think they've also got 2 very good defensive midfielders in Wanyama and Schneiderlin, who break the game up when they need to. But Schneiderlin's willing to get forward as well and support. So they're 2 very underrated players in the Premier League.
Yep. Predictions, guys?
2-1 Arsenal.
Yeah, I think Arsenal will edge it by 1 goal.
I think Arsenal will win, but I'll say 1-0. But if Southampton do get into it, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Moving on then, Manchester City are playing Spurs now. This is obviously a big clash, not just in terms of the league, because Spurs still think they can win the league, but also top 4 qualification for Champions League. Any thoughts on who you think will be the winners in this match?
Well, it's 2 teams that haven't been performing that great recently. I think there's pressure on both to get a result from here. I would say City look like they can score more freely than Tottenham, and I think that could be the difference between the 2 teams.
City have been destructive at the Etihad this season, and Spurs, their matches have been quite lacklustre. They've scored a shockingly low amount of goals for a team that are looking to get Champions League qualification and perhaps more. I think that because it's at the Etihad where City have been so dominant this season, I think that Spurs, they're going to have to either produce their best performance of the season so far to get anything, or I think City's just going to steamroller them.
I mean, two negatives that have come both teams' ways this season is Manchester City have been criticised for their form away from home, and obviously it's at the Etihad this week. And Spurs being criticised for all the attacking talent that they've replaced Gareth Bale with. You know, they spent over £100 million, and yet they're winning games 1-0. Do you think that this will change in the future, John?
I think, well, whether it change in the future, I'm not so sure. I think at the moment they're really going to struggle against the Man City side at home, who are scoring goals for fun, especially at home. But Spurs have played more games than they've scored goals. Like that sort of form in the Premier League, it doesn't get you top four if you're scoring like 9 goals in 11 games. I think that's what they've got at the moment. So I think that if they don't change their ways pretty soon, they're going to be shown up by quite a few of the big teams.
I mean, obviously, thanks to the money that Spurs had received from the Bale transfer, they've been able to buy notable players from the continent. Eric Lamela, Christian Eriksen, Roberto Soldado. I don't think that they could have expected them all to gel in within 2 or 3 weeks or perhaps a month. I think they realised it would take a number of months for them to bond as a team. But I think Spurs fans are going to have to hope that they start pulling out the performances sooner rather than later, or else they might miss out on a coveted 4th spot.
Yeah, I think AVB's under a lot more pressure this season. After narrowly missing out last year, I think and the amount of money spent this year, the pressure is on for him to get that top 4 place. I think anything less will be a massive disappointment.
Yep. Predictions for the game?
I'd say City win 2-0. Oh, 2 or 3-0.
3-0 City.
I'm going to plump for a 1-1 draw.
Okay. Cardiff are home against Manchester United this week. I mean, Man United, looking at the other fixtures of the top 4 clubs, or shall I say maybe even top 5 now, do you think this is a chance for Man United to gain points again on their rivals in the title race?
I think they do have probably the best fixture out of their top rivals, but I don't think it's going to be an easy match nonetheless. Cardiff have performed well this season. I think they've performed as well as they could have expected. Because it is at the Cardiff City Stadium, you know, logic tends to reason that home teams perform better when they're at home. I don't think Man United will be as dominant as what they would be at Old Trafford, but I do expect them to overcome the opposition that Cardiff will pose.
I think, yeah, as Ryan said, they have the easiest fixture on paper. They were questioned after the first week, especially. They did well in the first week, but they were questioned on their form, Man United. But they've sort of come on strong now, and they're 5th in the league. So I think that as long as they keep performing, they keep Rooney and Van Persie on fire. That they'll keep going. So yeah.
I think it was expected that Man United's fixtures at the start of the season were difficult. So I don't think anyone was expecting Man United to get to this stage unbeaten or anything like that.
Especially seeing as it's Moyes' first year.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a period of transition. But now you can look at their fixtures and they're a lot more winnable games. And if they can get through now until the Christmas period unbeaten, then they're right in the mix for the title. Yeah,
they're certainly not out of it yet. But predictions for the Cardiff Man United game?
1-0 United.
I'd say 2 or 3-0 United.
I think it'll be quite tight, but there'll be goals. So 3-2 to Man United.
Okay. West Ham, I've got Chelsea in a London derby. Chelsea are probably the favourites to win this game. Chelsea have also been criticised for the lack of goals that they're scoring, especially striker-wise. I mean, do you think there's a striker who could maybe step up to the plate for Chelsea and maybe get about 20 goals this season?
Lukaku? Well, Etu's starting to find his form a little bit. I was a bit confused that he joined Chelsea. I don't think he's the right fit for the system, but they've been able to incorporate him in now. He's starting to get a bit more used to English football, obviously. Spent time away at Russia, and the standard's not going to be the same. But West Ham have also got the same problem. They haven't got strikers who can score, and it could be a very dull affair, I think.
I think that in terms of strike-wise for Chelsea, Fernando Torres has started to show a couple of good performances, but for a striker, you don't always want performances, you always want goals. He's never scored prolifically throughout his Chelsea career. It's half the player of what he was at Liverpool. But I think that I personally imagine that Chelsea want Fernando Torres to be their number one striker. They brought Eto'o in, obviously, just to bulk up the numbers in their striking offence, because they've only got Bar as well as Eto'o and Torres. I think that West Ham will pose a defensive test to Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea are going to be able to get more than 3 goals. I'll be surprised if they get 3 or more goals. I can see it being, as Kieran said, a possibly boring match.
Do you think that Chelsea should have not sent Lukaku out on loan and maybe kept him and not signed Samuel Eto'o then?
I think he's their best striker at the club. Goals wise, like, he did amazing at West Brom last season, and I think it was a bit unnecessary. I mean, Eto'o was an okay signing, but I think they already had Lukaku there, and loading him out I think was the wrong move. But a great move for Everton, who got him. For the game, I think that West Ham, they don't even play a striker half the time. They usually have 6 in midfield, or 6 midfielders that are on the pitch. So I could easily see it being a 1-goal affair, like maybe a last-minute goal, say, for Chelsea.
I think what has helped Chelsea this season is that their midfielders have stepped up to the plate and started scoring. Hazard and Oscar especially. They've performed really well this season, and Chelsea wouldn't be where they are on the table if it wasn't for those midfield talents.
Just to go back on the Lukaku thing, I think I might have already said, but Chelsea's system, they need a big, strong centre forward to hold the ball up for them.
Almost like Didier Drogba played for him.
Yeah, exactly. And Lukaku fits that profile totally. By him being that pivot point up front, you can then build your attacks through Oscar, Mata, Hazard, whoever. All their technical midfielders, I think, would prefer a big, strong centre forwards to who they know will retain the possession for them while they make these runs off the ball.
I mean, Torres is. It's been announced that he might not even make the Spain World Cup squad because of his performances. He's not playing week in, week out. It's rotated between him and Samuel Eto'o. Obviously, he moved for £50 million to Chelsea. He's been there for a couple of years now. Do you think we'll ever see his form be as good as what it was at Liverpool?
I don't think so. I think what helped Torres at Liverpool was he instantly struck a partnership with Steven Gerrard. And whilst you could argue Chelsea have got their version of Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard is past his prime. When Torres first joined Liverpool 5 years ago, Steven Gerrard is just in his prime. So he was able to instantly form a relationship and a bond with Torres. And because Lampard is, he's what now, 35, is he? I don't think that there's a player in the mould of a Gerrard that can just bomb forward from midfield by him, like just penetrative passes, just run at teams. I don't think. Do
you not think that Chelsea's other forgotten man, Juan Mata, could maybe strike up a partnership with Torres if they're both to play?
I think he's more of a sort of a cultured, creative playmaker rather than an offensive, straight to the
box-to-box midfielder.
That's the word I'm looking for. Box-to-box midfielder.
But surely, if he's a playmaker, then he'd be able to create the chances for Torres to score.
I think that a playmaker helps when you have a strong target man, just laying those dinks over the top of defences for big strikers to hold the play up. I think that's more suited to a Lukaku than a Torres.
I think that for a partnership to form, both players have to be playing most of the games, and most of the time, one or two or both of them aren't playing. They've got a rotation ethos, I think, there. So either Eto'o or Oscar is playing in the positions that they're most used to.
Predictions on the West Ham Chelsea game?
2-1 Chelsea.
1-0 Chelsea.
I said earlier 1-0 Chelsea, last minute goal.
Right, the Monday night football season Midlands derby, West Brom playing Aston Villa. It's been announced in the last couple of days that Steve Clarke's contract will run out in the summer, and that West Brom are yet to contact him over a new deal. Obviously, they had a great season last year and started off well this year. But what do you expect? Where do you expect West Brom to finish this season?
Well, I think it was announced that contract negotiations will start in the new year. So, providing that they can... I mean, I think Clarke, even if his contract was allowed to expire, I think he'll still try to maintain as good the position for West Brom. I don't think he's sort of a snide manager, sorry. So I think he'd always do best for the club. But I think they'll be looking to break into the top half like they did that last season. But I don't think they'll be too disheartened if they only finished, between 10th and 12th.
Yeah, I think just scraping the top half is the best they can hope for this year. Obviously, they had a great campaign last year with Lukaku at the helm. This year, they haven't got as a prolific goal scorer on them, but they do have up-and-coming players like Mourinho. So I think that they will have some good games. I think they will challenge in some games, but I think maybe no more than 10th is what they can hope for this year.
And what about Aston Villa? They was in a relegation fight last year, but this year they're sort of mid-table and they look better as well.
They do look more defensively stable. I think that was their problem for a lot last season. They had quite a lot of injuries as well.
Very young squad Lambert's got as well.
Yeah, so you kind of think that they're only going to get better, and last season it was all about just staying up, and then they could build on a year's worth of relegation battle experience. And I think this year they do look a little bit more comfortable. The atmosphere around the club seems to be a lot calmer, and they're a decent side.
Yeah, as both Kieran and Grant said, I think that the young team weren't expected to pose much challenges last year. I think they were lucky to avoid relegation, but now they've matured by at least one season. They've added a couple of players into the squad, in Antonio Luna and Bakuna. I think that they are looking more stable, and they should get a mid-table finish.
I think a lot of teams are coming on strong this year, like Southampton, for example, that are probably outperforming themselves at the moment, like based on last season. But even teams like Sunderland and Newcastle are getting results and moving up the table. I think there's a lot of competition for the mid-table positions, and saying they'll finish 10th or so for any team is quite hard at this stage.
Surely Aston Villa's best signing in the summer was Christian Benteke signing a new contract.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Predictions for this match?
It's tough to call because it's at the Hawthorns. I think that West Brom might have the advantage and scrape a 2-1 win.
I say 1-0.
2-0 West Brom.
Okay, and that wraps up this week's edition of Straight Talking Sport. If you want to email us or give us your view on any topics that we've discussed today, you can email us at straighttalkingsport@gmail.com. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at GDE93. Kieran, you are?
At the Kieran Pick, spelled Kyran.
Ryan, you are?
At Ryan J. Hodge.
And John?
I'm at JohnRun51.
We've been talking, you've been listening. Until next time.